Hello and welcome to We the People. Marriage in India is not just a union of two individuals but an institution between a biological man and a biological woman. That is what the government of India told the Delhi High Court this week while opposing same-sex marriage. Opposing multiple pleas in various Indian courts seeking to legalize same-sex marriages under the Special Marriage Act 1954, the centre told the High Court that a marriage in India is dependent, and I'm quoting here, on age-old customs, culture and societal values. Tonight on We the People, we're asking, do customs and values not change with time? Tonight, we're not here to debate the issue. The matter is anyway sub judice and we await the court's ruling on this. The irony, though, is that in 2018, in a historic judgment decriminalizing homosexuality, the Supreme Court said that consensual adult gay sex is not a crime. Since then, thousands of Indians in same-sex relationships have been in a twisted no man's land, decriminalized but without rights. And tonight on We the People, let's just meet some of these Indians and hear their life stories. First, let's go across. We have Kavitha Arora and Ankita Khanna. They join us now. Kavitha and Ankita, they are petitioners in this case, a same-sex couple who filed a petition seeking to have same-sex marriages recognized and granted the same rights as opposite-sex marriages under the Special Marriage Act. So, you've both been together for 8 years, right? So you're over that 7-year itch. Wow, congratulations. You live together?
Yes.
So you take care of each other when ill, you fight, argue, make up like all couples, right? Can you first just tell us how you met?
We're both mental health professionals. We work as part of a child and adolescent mental health service. We met there and we were colleagues for quite a few years before we fell in love. And in January of 2012, we, happened to spend more time together, fall in love, and by the end of the year, we were living together and have been together since.
All right. So
it was, yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was Ankita actually in 2012 who came to me in January, in the early part of the year, saying, I have a New Year's resolution that I want to have a better working relationship with you. And I was quite oblivious that we didn't have a good working relationship. So I was like quite quizzical, and I said, "Oh, really? What do you think I can do?" And that's how we started talking more, and we spent a lot more time together. And it's history now. We're together and living together for the last 8 years.
It's history now. You've lived together for 8 years. So then why and when did you start desiring to get married? Why after 8 years do you want to get married? And then you also try to register your marriage in the middle of a pandemic. Is that correct? I mean, what was so urgent?
So, see, the initial part of our relationship, it was far more about finding the relationship itself, because the way it started and the way, relationships go, in terms of commitment, in terms of building a life together, I think the first few years was spent navigating that. And it was only in the first, after the first 3-4 years when we were living together that we started realizing that there were certain difficulties. For example, Ankita and I were living together, but she could not have our home as her permanent residential address because there was no concept of what is the relationship between you two. So if I'm the owner of the flat, who is she and how can she have a residence proof of the same place? She's neither tenant nor related nor, sister, daughter or whatever. So it started from there that we realized that there was so much to navigate, that if you run a household together, which is part of a relationship naturally, we often used to want a joint bank account, which was also difficult. And as these things, or life insurance, for example, if I want to nominate her or she wants to nominate me in her health insurance, these are not possibilities. And I think it took us some time to traverse some of these issues and also, sort of have the acceptance and support of our families till we started realizing that as the pandemic came, one of the things that stared us in the face really was, and I think it was for a lot of us, that if one of us fell ill, in the state of the pandemic where people can't access each other as much, and my brother actually lives abroad, how were we going to be able to take medical decisions for each other? So I think that was one of the things that prompted us, even during the pandemic. It raised this question of, do we not need to legitimize this now?
Okay, so I just want to ask, I'm sorry to be crass, but what you're saying here is that, let's say if one of you falls sick, you get coronavirus and you're in an ICU, then the other person has no rights to take medical decisions for you. And in the case when you're talking about renting a house, let's say the other person would have to be kicked out, or could be kicked out of a house that you've lived in, which has been your home for 8 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But how will this change if you're married?
So legally, marriage gives you this automatically, all these rights if you're a spouse. All of this, including if something happens to me, the house goes to Ankita, all my assets would go to Ankita. If something happens to her, all her assets come to me.
Surely, do you need to get married for this? Aren't there other ways to get these? I mean, if you're saying, yes, you want to nominate each other in health and life insurance policies. Can two individuals not open a bank account together?
Actually, Sarah, you will be surprised how difficult that is, because to be honest, in the last 8 years, we have been going individually through all these, hoops. And it's only, we also thought this should be simple enough. We've had endless conversations with customer care or at banks, at life insurance, at health insurance. And believe me, there is no box that you can tick for partner, because everything is, haan, but relationship kya hai? And there are these categories of, okay, is it a next of kin in terms of sister, cousin, this and that, but there's nothing for partner.
So sorry, I just want to understand one thing. Would this be the same if they were opposite sex partners? Would this be the same problem if you are not married but living in, trying to open an account or trying to take medical decisions if somebody is in the ICU, but you were opposite sex partners?
I don't know what that would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know
as far as we
what
know,
the
marriage
current
confers that
legislation
right.
is, we don't know. But marriage is the only bundle of rights, really, where you don't have to name this person in every document and then see whether or not that stands the test of time. You see? And really, that bundle of rights is what we are petitioning for here.
Okay,
so one
you're
of the nuances
saying
to that. Yeah.
Marriage is not just a case of legal recognition. You're not asking for that. You've come out, you live together, your parents are on board, you're clearly like adults, and but you're saying it confers substantive rights for spouses. And by definition, same-sex couples who are unable to get married, you are denied those rights. So if one of you have a heart attack, if you're in the ICU, the other one has no rights over your medical procedures, you can't decide. That's a horrible way to live, especially we've all had those fears over the past year. What will happen if someone falls sick? Who will take decisions? What happens next? And again, I hate to be so crass, like if somebody were to die, then the other person can't claim your body. Is that what happens? Your parents would have to come in or something like that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's even simpler sometimes, Sarah. I mean, I'll tell you a recent example. Ankita's mother was in the hospital not very long ago, 2 to 3 weeks ago. And because we are close and we both went to Dehradun where they live, and I stayed the night before her operation with her. In the morning, the sister asked me, because she was wheeled in for the operation, I was the only other relative, which is what the family wanted. And the sister asked me to sign on a consent form. And when it came to what is the relationship you have, I looked at her. And at that point of time, the decision was, what do I write over here? And I ran a few things. She asked me, are you the daughter? I said, no. Are you sister? No. Are you? And she went through the 5 things that you could be. And eventually I looked at her and I said, I don't know what to write. What do you think I should write? And we agreed that I will write friend. And she got away with it and she said, you just write friend and let's go on with it. So I think sometimes we don't even realize where all this becomes an automatic right when a couple is married.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think we discover it every year with every little milestone that as a couple we find. And I know we've talked about the more prosaic, the more logistical things, but it's also often in our social circles. And it's very simple. On one hand, the paradox is that we are a family. When we are invited to a wedding, for example, we are invited sometimes together. But the bride or the groom who knows us and knows our relation doesn't know how to introduce me to Ankita's side of the family. And oftentimes they'll say, well, she's the friend, she's the partner, nobody understands what partner means. Why has she gotten a friend along for the marriage? And so it becomes a whole lot of different things, and some of them are very nuanced, very simple, that oftentimes we'll say,
so it's
I
a
won't
work
go
in
for this
progress.
marriage.
Okay, let's get in, let's go across to Texas, where we have Parag Mehta and Vaibhav Jain joining us. They're a same-sex couple. They filed a petition seeking to have same-sex marriages registered under the Foreign Marriages Act, right? One of you is an Indian citizen, the other one is a US citizen, an OCI card holder of Indian origin. First, quickly, just introduce yourself to our viewers. How did you both meet?
Sure. Hi, Sarah. My name is Vaibhav, and I grew up in New Delhi. I'm a public health researcher here in the United States. We currently are in White Plains, New York. Texas is where Parag's family is. So we were there for 6 months, just taking care of his parents and, riding on the pandemic over there. And we met in June of 2012 at the LGBTQ Pride Parade in Washington, D.C.
And I'm Parag Mehta. I'm the OCI card holder. I'm an Indian, but grew up in the United States.
So you guys are married. You got married in the US though, right? You then tried to register your marriage under the provisions of the Foreign Marriage Act, but it was refused the authorities at the consulate in DC or New York. I mean, there's no consulate. So consulate in New York.
Correct. Yeah. It was actually about 1 year ago this time, right before the COVID lockdown began.
Yeah.
Okay. You tried to register before the lockdown. Because you wanted to, travel to India? What was the deal? You anticipated there would be a lockdown?
We wanted the legal rights and protections, the same that Dr. Arora spoke about, but we didn't realize that a week later the whole world would change. And in fact, the denial of that registration has had very severe implications for us. Vaibhav's parents both got COVID. His father was hospitalized. In that moment of crisis, he needed to get on a plane and come home. I could not come as his spouse because all OCI travel was suspended. And because I had no legal connection to him under the Indian law, I wasn't allowed to come, even though we are legally married in the United States.
And a lot of it is just like what Kavitha and Ankita said. Sarah, is basically the rights. When, let's say, Parag and I were in India, and anything were to happen to me, he would have no legal right over it. Let's say my family was, they love us and they completely support us. Let's say it was the opposite case. They wouldn't support us. What would stop them from completely alienating him in an entire process? It could be a medical decision for me. It could be my death. It could be an inheritance, anything of that nature. And Parag could be easily alienated. So we thought that was absolutely wrong and had to be fixed.
So, the centre told the court this week that marriage in India necessarily depends on age-old customs, rituals, practices, cultural ethos and social values, right? I mean, that's true. You both have had to fight to overcome cultural and social values, even while coming out to your families and loved ones. Is that correct? And I read, I heard one of your dad's speech at your wedding. Both of you in your youth even struggled to come out as being gay and attempted suicide. Is that true? So it's not been easy for you to take on societal values and cultural values and phobia.
It is true. And yeah, my dad gave an amazing speech. But look, that wasn't just by happenstance. That was an evolving process. Culture has to evolve just like people evolve. And so our religion, our faith, our customs, our traditions, these are works in progress. And by the way, India is not the only country to deal with this. 30 other countries around the world have legalized same-sex marriage over the last 20 years. And in each of those places, the same arguments were made, that culture and tradition and faith. But in fact, culture and tradition and society adapt to changing circumstances. When we know better, we do better.
And that's what we did during our wedding. So, in 2017 is when we got legally married, but 2019 is when we had a religious ceremony in Texas. It was a Jain wedding. There was absolutely no custom for it. There was no, framework that we had. So we actually adapted. We made the wedding ceremony totally gender neutral, Sarah. So for instance, if you have Kanyadan, for instance, in a woman being sort of given away, which is very sexist, I feel, but we made it Vardan. So Var basically meaning the groom, and both our families gave us away. And so for us, we had to adapt because, we wanted to make sure that the family that was in present, there were 500 friends and family who attended, many from India. We wanted them to feel that this is exactly like any other wedding that they would do. And
you wanted to normalize this.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so talking about changing with time, changing your values, your cultural values, your phobias, I want to play a little bit of the speech that your dad, Prayag, made at your wedding. It's simply gone viral on social media. I think over 500,000 views. It's left many teary-eyed on watching it. Let's just play a bit of that for our viewers.
We sat home at 4:25 p.m. on that Friday night. Parag had a very small speech. Dad and Mom, I'm gay. I have known it since I was 10 years old. I thought I will hide my being gay until you die, so you won't be embarrassed. I tried to commit suicide while I was in the high school, but I did not succeed. Thank God for that. The whole thing was like 3-minute speech. In life, whenever you are in crisis, you need to ask the right question. I asked a simple question. Do I love my son any less at 4:31 than I loved him at 4:24? And a long pause, and the answer was no, I still love him the same.
Prag, that wasn't easy for your dad, right? He's like normal, they see Indian American dads. He admits that he was homophobic. So you think if your dad can change and overcome all of that, and I know later in the speech he says he knew that many people in your family would not be as accepting, and he said he was willing to break relations with them and just be with the ones who will stand by him at this point of time. So you think change is possible in mindsets, and that's what you're hoping?
I know change is possible. I've seen it in my own family. We've seen it in Vaibhav's family, in India, here in the US, and we've seen it in the legal system. We've seen courts all around the world and legislatures change the law to make it more accepting. In 2018, the Indian Supreme Court ruled that homosexuality shouldn't be criminalized. That was a change after hundreds of years of one way of thinking. So we are evolving. We are societies that are constantly in change, and the goal should always be to expand rights, to include rights for more people, not take them away.
So which comes first, law though or societal change?
They have to happen in tandem. The court exists within a society, and so part of what has to happen while we're going through this court case is more people in India need to have these conversations. More people need to come out the way we did. The court reflects the society, but the court also has to help shape it. And so we're asking for the court to do what society also has to do.
And that's what we're trying to do, just create a conversation about this. Marriage provides a bundle of rights. You say things that opposite sex or heterosexual couples take for granted, and you're simply saying that's what you want as an Indian citizen, at least Vaibhav, that's what you want. This is a fight for equal rights, right? Okay, let's go across. We have another couple joining us from Hyderabad. Let's just bring Abhay and Supriyo joining us from Hyderabad. Abhay and Supriyo, quickly, you're not petitioners in this case, but you're closely watching this case. Why?
Well, yes. You know, Sarah, I think it's a wonderful question. And I was listening to Ankita and Kavitha and, Vaibhav, Parag. The stories are quite similar. If you just asked me what I would say, so it's been 8 years we are together. I mean, I was like 22, he was 26. And, we spent really quality time with our families. I mean, I belong to Calcutta. He is from Delhi. We keep visiting each other's home. And our families travel to Hyderabad and, we go out for trips and everything. But still today, say, for instance, when I talk to my colleague and they're talking about their wife and husband, I really wanted to introduce Abhay as husband, not just a boyfriend or a partner, as Dr. Kavitha and Ankita said very correctly. And apart from that, I think it's going to be really prudent for our family to introduce Abhay to our extended family, maybe as my husband rather than boyfriend or just a friend. And I think our society, they understand the concept of husband rather than...
So you agree with the government then that, marriage is, I think all of you agree that marriage is a coming together of two families. Yeah. And you're proving that your families have all come together. So you agree with the center?
Yeah. Our families are incredibly supportive, so when we came out at that point of time, of course, they didn't know about this subject. And I think we were also discussing about, whether people who had a certain attitude, can they change over a period of time? Like, so that is the journey that our parents have also gone through. When we came out to them, both sides of our, parents, they were not incredibly, excited or say, on cloud nine to know that, their children are gay. But they understood that they need to read more, they need to understand about what the legal argument is, what the medical argument is. They need to kind of keep in mind that, of course, this is their children that they're talking about. And it has been a good journey, it has been a smooth journey so far with respect to our parents. The parents did turn around, and they have wholeheartedly accepted us. And not just the fact that, my parents have met Supriyo's parents have met me, but they have met each other as well. So they are, completely on board.
All right. Let me quickly bring in some audience. The audience wants to react. Let's get some reactions. Pavni, Goel, and Satyanarayan. Can you unmute yourself?
Hello, everyone. I have the following questions. So my first question is, as stated by the center, that the end goal of a marriage is that a biological child is born out of it. But then are adopted children less than biological children? My second question is, there are women who are infertile to have children. So are they less than a biological women? My third question is, when our country is already homophobic, telling that LGBTQ people, they don't fall under the ambit of family, won't it further strengthen the hatred towards these LGBTQ people? Fourthly, why is the union our parents arranged with strangers like arranged marriage more pure than the love these LGBTQ people have out of their own choice? And
right,
lastly,
lots to think about, many controversial aspects thrown up by the center stand basically in court is what Pavni is pointing out here. Satyanarayanan, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. So my question is that why is it so important that you have to do marriage? You can also live in relationships. So why this tag of marriage is important for all?
Okay, I think Kavitha's answered that, but maybe closing argument we can go across to the others. Simran and Riddhi Agarwal.
Yes. So my question is this, that when someone says same-sex marriage, a question of parenting usually arises. Why is it so? Is there any evidence that suggests that same-sex parents are worse parents, especially when compared to dysfunctional couples in traditional marriages?
I think our next show is going to have to be about adopting kids next for same-sex couples, clearly. Riddhi Agarwal?
My question is that doesn't all opposition to the same-sex marriage boil down to homophobia and opposition to gay sex?
Sure. And Tilot, let's just quickly try and get some audience in. Tilot?
So I don't think that such marriages give people the usual family bondings, and they don't enjoy the normal living of a family. And when it comes to children, the element of natural love and affection, I think it doesn't exist.
Okay, fair enough, that's your opinion, but should they have a choice of whether they want to get married or not? Should that be allowed to them? I want to bring in, right now we have Malini Jeevaratnam joining us. Okay, we've lost the line there with Malini. Then I'm going to just, we have closing arguments. I want to just go across to all of you. You've heard the views of our audiences. If you could just react first, Parag and Vaibhav, your last closing arguments on the show tonight.
Well, I think that these arguments around adoption or biological marriage have been used again in other places, and they're just not true. Gay parents can be just as good parents as heterosexual parents, and whether we do it through adoption or, as Vaibhav and I are trying to do, through surrogacy, we can be fit parents. But the other point is, I wouldn't automatically assume that all of India is homophobic. I think there's fear of the unknown. And what we're trying to do, and what Sarah is doing with this program, is we're bringing information and stories to people that they've never heard before. My parents and Vaibhav's parents didn't know any gay people before we came out to them. But today, they're champions of equality. we only get better when we know better.
So in what Parag mentioned, my 85-year-old nanny who used to live in a very small town outside of Lucknow, Sarah, she actually invited Parag over and blessed both of us before our wedding. And it's not that she, is very, very woke and she actually knows of all of this. She did not. She, I think, merely is a second or third grade educated. And, my cousins sort of, introduced her to shows and, had conversations about what homosexuality is. So when my mother was ready to tell my nanny, my mother was very, very fearful. She was like, this is going to be very hard. And my nanny just accepted and said, the child's happiness is over any society, any ritual, any...
So India is changing, but we just don't see enough of this side of India. We don't hear enough of these voices. Ankita, Dr. Kavitha, quickly, 30 seconds.
So I believe this is about equality and choice. Irrespective of gender, irrespective of sexual orientation, are human beings and ordinary citizens of India, are we equal? And I think that's the crux of what I would like to say right now, that does sexual orientation being different or your gender being different, does that change everything else that you aspire for and would like to do? We have been very fortunate. We have found love. We found what Bollywood talks about. We want to spend the rest of our life with each other. Should we not have that because our sexual orientation is different? I think that's the question. And the bigger question really is, and what our experience has been, the more people come out and talk about this and find relatable examples, the more it is acceptable. So whether it is what Parag and Vaibhav are saying about their families, or it is about, for example, our workplace, which knows about us and accepts fully, or about our clients. We're both mental health professionals, and with the kind of public coming out that we've done right now with this petition, almost all our clients who come to us are aware that this is what we are doing. So I think the acceptance that we have found is mind-blowing in the India that we are living in today, and it gives us a whole lot of optimism and hope with the kind of support that we are receiving on a daily basis right now.
All right, so this is closing arguments. This is about equality as Indian citizens. You want to have equal rights as others. Well, thank you all for joining us on We the People tonight. This is a show where we believe it's important to speak up, but it's also important to listen. And tonight we heard these stories of a crucial petition that's being, many petitions actually that are being heard in our courts. We'll perhaps come back to this topic when there's a verdict in this case. Thank you all for joining us tonight.